During coronavirus, everyone's looking for ways to feel happy and connected to themselves. Music is a really good way to actually feel the vibe, let go of all the stress and anxiety, and just ground yourself. In today's show, we're going to be speaking to a music expert and find out how he finds happiness in his life. Hi, welcome to the Secret Men's Business podcast. This is Joey Busuttil. On today's show, we're going to be speaking to Sam Ludeman, the guy that was on The Voice, the guy that entertains and sings with his great voice, and he finds happiness and joy through his voice. So let's hear how he does it. Sam, how are you?
Good. How are you, Joey?
Good, mate. Thank you so much for talking to us. I feel very privileged to be talking to someone that has done so well on their career and on TV. So again, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Do you want to, before we start, just tell people a little bit about yourself for those people that maybe haven't seen you or heard of you?
Yeah, sure. I grew up, in country Victoria in Echuca and Shepparton, and then got into musicals around year 10, and didn't really know what I wanted to do. Was a bit of a troublemaker, and then did find music and performing, I guess. And I ended up studying at the Ballarat Academy of Performing Arts, doing a 3-year Bachelor of Arts in Music Theatre. From there, I went on to do about 7 years of professional music theatre, touring around Asia and Australia in a few shows like Fame and Xanadu and High School Musical, and Grease the Musical was the last one I finished up on.
Wow.
And then, I've got the call to audition for The Voice, and did that. And then since then, I've been pursuing original music and still just performing in any way I can and singing.
Fantastic, yeah. So let's sort of like just touch upon The Voice a little bit. Like we know it's television, and we know a lot more about reality TV nowadays. So can you maybe just share your own insights to what that experience was like?
Yeah, sure. Basically, I was wary going into it because you do hear how it can be. You're a bit of a pawn on a game in a game of chess, and there's all the other people pulling the strings, and you're really the puppet. But they told me it would be different, and you get to choose all your own songs, and you get to work with these super coaches. It's not about the backstory; it's about your voice and the chairs turn. And they sold me. I don't believe it being very, very true. I didn't get to pick my songs. I didn't really work that much with Seal. You don't feel super supported. You feel you're a bit anxious and wondering when you're going to get your moment. And I think it was just a typical TV show yet again, but it was a great one, and it did a lot for me in many ways. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, during that, I know it's all retrospect now, but during that time, how did you cope with your mental health? Because I think that this is a mental health
during
podcast.
The Voice?
Yeah, during The Voice, because you mentioned anxiety, and you were told one thing, but it didn't happen. So, and I can also imagine it being very fast.
Very fast paced. A producer or a showrunner in your ear and saying certain things, and after you watch shows like what's that show on Stan?
The Bachelor.
Unreal.
Unreal. Yeah, Unreal.
You kind of realize maybe what gets said between producers and showrunners and the person looking after you that has your back, and how much trust you give them. But at the time, I did get severe reflux, which I've had stomach issues in the past dealing with. As I get anxious, or if it's coming closer to opening night, or I get cast in a leading role, or I'm going through a lot of auditions, I can get an upset stomach. And I did get reflux, and I just felt overwhelmingly like I didn't really know how to react because the show was blowing up. My blind audition went really well. Then there was all this expectation, and then I was put in as one of the favorites at the very start of the show. And that pressure was quite hard to deal with. And I don't think I dealt with it very well. I opening up a lot around that time and talking to friends, drinking a bit too much to deal with it, or something like that. I was staying up really late. I was kind of trying to distract myself from the reality that I could just be eating really healthy. This could be the biggest opportunity of my life, sleeping well, and really looking after my voice and stuff. But it's like my brain just couldn't quite kind of focus in on what I needed to do.
In retrospect, like, what do you think what would you say to him? What would you say to that guy that just didn't do didn't channel it in? Like, you probably would have learned a lot since that experience. You know.
Definitely. I would have pulled myself into line. I think I would have said, mate, this is your opportunity. This doesn't come around every day.
Mm,
Really focus, eat well, stop staying up so late, try to find a balance, meditate maybe, try and find your center, because you're in Sydney, you got producers in your ears, you're all hyped up on the fame that this is maybe going to cause. Just try to center your, I would have said, try to find my center.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, because we've talked on the phone about mental health and your interest in it, especially with
Mm,
men. Again, I don't want to like harp on what The Voice does, but
mm,
do you think that it's an opportunity for them to learn how to actually deal with people? Because I interviewed a contestant from Married at First Sight, and he was sort of saying that, the same thing as you, it's produced, da da da. So
mm.
do they actually care about the contestants in a way that they care about your anxieties, or are they just focused on the show?
I think there's a level. I think the corporation and the idea of the show can't afford to care too much about that.
Mm,
Um, I think the people underneath and the genuine people that you speak to try to listen and try to do something. I don't think the idea of or the entire thing, I don't think that's even close to their number one goal, is looking after the artist's mental well-being or just well-being in general. They want good ratings, good stories, and lots
yeah,
of and more growth and more
yeah.
money, which is how the world works.
And I guess, you said it, but it's like if you feel like a pawn, then that's what it's going to feel like, isn't it?
Yeah.
So with that experience, what are some of the highlight things that you think you've learned about yourself? Like, do you think that you've taken on those comments that you made about meditating and eating well? Are you doing that now?
Yes, I am. I still struggle with it, as I'm sure every human does, and I do get hard on myself when I decide that I'm going to have a week off drinking, and then I break on the third day, and I get really hard on myself. But I think that is what I found is a more balance, not to be so hard on myself. Where I go, okay, for a month I'm going to be the cleanest, most healthiest person in the world, and then the next month be kind of on the opposite end of that scale. What
Mm,
I'm trying to find is a happy medium
mm.
and a middle ground. And I think I have found that a bit more a balance and being centered, and realizing how important that is, not just to jump from one end of the spectrum to the other.
Yeah. Well, everyone tries. It is hard because it requires dedication. You're young, so you want to enjoy your life as well.
Mm,
So, what is your definition or interpretation of being successful in the music industry? Like, you went on The Voice,
mm,
that's exposure. Now you're doing your own gigs and touring, and you've got a great website. So, for
mm.
you, what do you imagine? What is it? What is it that you want?
Um, what I've realized, I think, is that it's persistence and passion that really get you through. I'm not necessarily the most talented person, and I'm not being too self-deprecating there. It's like, where you sit. If you've got a good enough self-awareness, you know where you sit, you know where your strengths are, you know where your weaknesses are. And so, but what I've realized is you can't really fail if you never give up. Um, and if anything, I'm finding that the more I'm just sticking at it, when I could have quit or got another job or a full-time job that paid me a proper salary and with benefits, and I just realized that I wouldn't have been happy, even though I maybe would have been more financially stable.
Mm,
Yeah, what I found is that the persistence pays off, and I'm still passionate about singing. I still love singing, whether it's writing my own songs or covering the latest song that's just come out. I love telling stories through my voice in that way, and yeah, I think I've realized that this is for life, most likely for me.
yeah, I mean, like, if we actually look at big celebrities and their life stories, there's always that persistence thing is very like sort of common in all of it, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you don't feel like the break's going to come, and then it comes
Mm,
through that persistence, through that sort of like
yeah.
that period of time where you feel like you've got no money or you're really low.
Yeah.
Just from your experience and meeting a lot of people on the way, how do you what's your definition of what you think mental health is like in the music industry? Like, because we're coming into an era now of YouTube celebrities, and everything
Mm,
seems quicker. Like, I mean, I'm old, and I remember when things used to be at number one for like weeks and weeks and weeks.
yeah.
So what do you think is happening to people's mental health with the persistence or the the music industry itself?
Yeah, I think it's slightly worrying for me, if I'm being honest. I think everything does happen quick, and everything's about growth and how quick you can churn things out. And if you do blow up, it can just be from in your living room to massive stages in overnight. And that transition is terribly hard to deal with for any normal person slash any professional, any exceptional person. It's a lot to deal with. I feel like musos in general, and artists in general are fairly self-deprecating and unsure and uncertain, because that's kind of the culture that we grow up in. That if you want to be an artist or a thespian, that you're really taking a risky job.
So does that mean that do you feel like that most people have got some element of mental health issues?
I think, uh, as in general, obviously, I'm
Just
not
an
being
element. It doesn't have to be big, but element like how they say
in general,
comedian.
yes, I would say
Yeah.
that we can be quite self-deprecating, uncertain, wary, anxious, and it comes from justified reasons. And in our industry, and I do think we need to kind of pat ourselves on the back a bit more and look at what we've achieved, not just what we missed out on and
Mm,
the rejection that we get, and kind of harboring on that, which it's hard. Like I could read a million great comments about myself, but I will still remember and focus on the 4 or 5 bad comments I've got. And that, to me, that's indicative of how we value ourselves. If I'm not loved by everyone, I value that one person's opinion down here
yeah.
instead of valuing the
Mm.
98%.
So have you figured out why you think you do that? Is it a validation thing, or is it, I know what you're saying, but it'll be interesting to see how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
How do you call yourself out on it?
For me, or meditation and Wim Hof breathing really help. Exercise really helps. When I stop doing those things, I notice I can spiral into more depressive thought. I don't get depression, but depressive thoughts, down days, down moments. Anxiety certainly has been introduced during COVID for me. I never used to really suffer from anxiety, and that's only started since the COVID. Um, yeah, sorry, that didn't really answer your question. What was
Oh, it's
the
sort of,
question?
yeah, like, I mean, it sort of leads to the COVID thing. Have you noticed? I'm guessing you have. Like,
Mm.
there's been a big change for
A
you.
big difference. For me personally, a big difference. I'm a very social people person. I got to perform on average 160 shows a year. That's nearly every second day I'm performing to a crowd or to a bunch of people and meeting and playing, and I just engaging with people. That went from 160 shows to 0 shows in
Mm,
March. And even with the live streams that we started that ended up are now very successful, I'm still not seeing people and touching people and dancing and enjoying my breaks, socializing, and then blowing the end of the week. My last gig of the week on a Sunday would be at the Albion, and I'd blow off steam and
mm,
have a few drinks. And I've really struggled with feeling a bit lost in my job, even though I've decided to keep being persistent and do these live streams twice a week. Um, yeah, I really felt I just kind of came unstuck a bit, and struggled with what I would consider very depressive thoughts or depression and losing my job and my livelihood in a certain way.
mm.
And also anxiety through the roof with having so we were having up to 3,300 consecutive viewers watching our live streams, but I'm not getting any feedback or any. And so any mistake I made, I would go, oh, that's on the internet forever in front of 3,300 households. Like it just really got to me. So I really had to look after myself.
Mm. Are you finding that it's become easier?
It's become a lot easier. Changing the environment was in really helped.
Mm,
So getting out of an environment that doesn't feel quite right is obviously really important.
mm.
And I had to move out of my place in St Kilda, and my girlfriend Elise is immunocompromised, so we're in the bush for about 16 weeks in the Obama near Echuca,
Wow. Okay.
and isolating. And I think because I felt so isolated and I couldn't even see a car drive past or anything, I
Mm,
just really gone from probably hundreds of people I see a week to 2 or 3 people
Yeah.
that I was living
Um,
with.
I mean, I noticed like even like Delta Goodrem, Tina Arena, all these big stars
Mm.
were doing live, Instagram feeds too. So I was thinking, it does hit, it hits everyone, doesn't it? It's interesting
Yeah.
when you're not in the industry. Like for me, I get surprised when I think about people's jobs, and I go, oh my god, it's hitting them. So do you envisage that this is going to change the industry, or do you think that we'll go back?
No, I think this is long term slash this is forever. A COVID normal, yes, could eventually, with let's say a vaccine comes out and there's no issue with coronavirus, it's still it's still not going to go back to how it was. I think
Mm,
it's changed drastically, and I think this is where artists need to be their most creative. And I can see a lot of them getting down and blaming, we're not looked after, people don't appreciate us, and all this stuff. And that is true, but that's not going to get you a job, and that's not going to get you out of this. This is where artists need to show that they're artists and be innovative, creative, and show their initiative.
yeah. Do you have any example of that? Any examples? Because for me personally, like I've been in lockdown for 200 days,
Mm.
and because there's been some medical reasons for me to do that, but
Yeah.
I've really discovered things I've never heard of before. Which I've discovered Twitch, so I'm listening to
Mm.
all these musicians. I've discovered all these festivals in Europe that I'm playing, and I always think to myself, if I wasn't in lockdown, I wouldn't be doing this.
No.
So I've sort of adapted the way I listen to music. Like, is there any examples in your world where you
Yeah.
found that there is a bit of adaptability?
In my world, I've loved seeing obviously the live streams taking over, but then the live streams where people are cutting in their friends and their friends on a delay, and they start playing in time with them. So virtual bands, like virtual pub groups and stuff like that. Collaborating with, sending your bit of a song because you're in lockdown to your other artist, getting them to do something on it, then passing it to the next person. So using technology and to its kind of its largest capabilities.
Yeah,
That's what I've seen really take over. But then I've seen people try to get creative uh, in different areas of their music. So they might start teaching online and they've never taught before. And they might start putting up YouTube videos, and they're kind of diversifying and getting creative, which I just love to see because it's just what we have to do.
yeah. I think it's a good idea. Just some advice for you: if you are feeling the need to connect, I really recommend that search on YouTube Tomorrowland and just
Okay.
watch a DJ gig or a
Yeah.
performer. That hour that you'll spend and that you'll feel it because people are dancing and you see the smiles. I always feel um, sort of transported for that hour, and it always
Yeah.
sort of like gets rid of any anxiety that I have.
Mm.
Can
Good.
I ask you a little bit about fame? Like, while we've got you here, like, how
Yeah.
do you think someone that was a unheard person who becomes, goes on a show and then, TV Week and all those places start to do
Mm.
stories about you? How did you sort of adapt to people hearing or knowing about your life?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like I remember coming home after my blind audition or after my battle round audition, and the first episode had aired. And I still, I think, was fairly humble enough to think, oh, no one's really going to recognize me yet. Like maybe if I win the show or something. But I could just feel what I must, a few of my mates that are, quite high up there in terms of fame and recognizability.
Mm.
Yeah, you know the word I mean. Um, yeah, there's just I felt all these eyes on me, and then just every now and then someone would have the courage, which was funny because it's like I don't have the courage to say, "Why are you looking?" or "Yeah, it's me from the show" or something like that. I'm not brandish enough to do that, but they're scared to go, "Hey, I really like you on that show," and that's all they want to say.
Yeah.
So I did find that kind of really blew
So
me
you,
away.
you didn't you didn't expect it.
No, not at all, and not
Because you
so
probably
quick.
forgot that something like one point something million people were watching you.
Yeah, and I do remember just as I went out for my blind audition, and I swear this wasn't on purpose, but the one of the producers or the showrunners had run up to the lady saying that I was about, okay, you're good, you're ready, you're going to go on, you're going to do fantastic. She came up and was like, hey, a quarter of Australia is watching. And it was like, for the first live show. And like, I think she was just excited that those numbers were blowing every other show out of the water. But I just remember I was about to go on. I was just like, oh no.
Yeah.
About 5 million people, 4.5 million people watching.
Oh God. I mean, I can't even comprehend it because like, again, you probably are focused on doing your job and then you don't realize that everyone's watching it and then people are talking and Voice is a popular show. So what about you meeting the celebrities? What was that like?
That was great. I loved, I only briefly met Keith Urban, and he's just a humble, genuine, seemed like a really nice soul. Delta was lovely, and I still know Delta, and I get along with her if I ever see her. She's lovely. Joel Madden, I had a few shots with one night and had a couple of drinks with, and he's an absolute legend. Funnily enough, my coach, Seal, I didn't connect with very well.
Yeah. Okay.
And
you should have gone with Joel.
I know. Oh, well, he didn't turn, but I should have gone with Delta. Absolutely.
Yeah.
In hindsight, but I didn't find Seal a great coach or a great inspiration.
But did you find them to be? Did you come to a point where you realized they're just humans?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yeah,
you do. Other than the ones that are trying to play like they're not, or maybe they've grown up with so much fame that they don't quite know how to be a general person, a normal human. Yeah, where their fame has elevated their just general sense of being to a bit higher status.
I mean, last night I actually watched, and don't laugh at me, okay, but I watched Justin Bieber's documentary, Seasons, and I have to admit I was very blown away by. I had no idea what it's like to write music.
Yeah.
And seeing what he goes through to produce a song, and the perfectionism and it's traumatic. Actually looked traumatic to me because he suffers from anxiety. So I was really sort of blown away by what he does and what musicians do in general. Because we can turn the radio on and hear a song, and we can just I like that song, but we don't really think about the work. So can I ask you, what advice would you give someone that was considering following in your lead, either going on The Voice or becoming a musician? What are some of your pearls of wisdom that you might want to pass on?
Yeah, I would say most of all that to trust your gut and not necessarily your mind as much. Obviously think things through, think everything through, and think it deeply through, but go with that urgency, that sense that even if that you think that thing's more right on paper, go with what just feels right. Go with what you think you're going to enjoy more, that's going to bring you more joy and more life, because I find that's the things I work harder on. When I've said yes to things for money or just because I thought I might get not famous but get something out of it that I think is more materialistic, it's never worked out as well. So my first pearl of wisdom would be to trust your gut and believe in yourself. And it's really hard to believe in your own decisions and your own talent.
Yeah.
The second thing is you have to put in the hours, put in the work. Don't say you want to be a singer and then you haven't practiced, you haven't done a vocal session, or you haven't done any practice in the last week. I wouldn't call you a singer. I'd call you a karaoke. You gotta do the work. And I find a lot of people don't want to do the work, and I find it hard. And I have to push myself, and I have to write down. I have to put reminders in my phone. Just do 10 minutes. Just do 10 minutes. I'm actually going to do that after this for some guitar practice because I'm
right.
And you got to keep learning because everyone else will jump on top of you like that. So put in the hours and trust your gut.
Yeah. I wanted to ask one quick question. Do you feel that we are moving away from talent and moving into Insta famous? Or do you think music will always be about talent?
It kind of has to be. There will be these sharp spikes in a YouTube sensation, but then you got to draw to your example is Justin Bieber. He was an internet sensation, but he works harder than probably anyone ever realizes.
I had no idea how hard he works.
Yeah, and
I've got total respect for him now.
Yeah, and Shawn Mendes and just a few of these people and just Jessie J, they're seen through this lens of, oh, they made it on YouTube, but I think talent gets found out if it's phony, if you're fake, if you're not a nice person for a long period of time, other than if you're Mariah Carey or something maybe, but you get found out. So phonies don't really last. So you have to be the real thing.
Yeah. And also, I guess you have to be, that all the points that you mentioned earlier about being grounded, eating well, all those dedication. I mean, if you don't believe it, it's not, because I do think that a lot of people are looking at social media as a way to get out of the work.
Yeah.
But the reality is that even that in itself is hard work. You've got to promote yourself all the time.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard to, like, I even take my hats off to some of these Insta models and Insta things. It's still a full-time gig, and and trust me, like, there's been times I've gone, oh, maybe I just get really fit, take my kit off, and I could get more followers. And obviously, that's that thing of trusting your gut and going, that's a terrible idea. You've got to want to do it. You've got to wake up going, you know what I'm going to do today? Find the best lighting, the best angles, the best. Like, I think they're still artists. They're still working really hard, because I see so many people not be able to do that, but still try. And it's because they're not passionate enough about it, I think.
Yeah, you're right. Sam, thank you so much for spending some time with us, and I hope your practice this afternoon goes really well. But,
Thank you.
good luck with everything that you do, and we'll be keeping an eye on it. I'm going to attach your website to this podcast.
Yep.
And again, thank you for talking to us.
No worries. Thanks very much, Joey.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Secret Men's Business podcast. Now be mindful to hit subscribe. Come on, click on that subscribe button and like this podcast. And at the same time, just be mindful that 2 podcasts are out every week, Monday and Thursday. Till next time, guys. See you next time. Bye.